In the world of One Piece, many names strike fear into the hearts of pirates, marines, and civilians alike. We saw it firsthand when people ran for their lives in Logtown after hearing pirates were among them, and again after Marineford. Luffy became so well known and feared that someone simply pretending to be Luffy could just wear a straw hat and make other pirates scared to fight. But how did a character like Luffy, who laughs at the silliest things and carries himself with a smile at all times, gain such infamy? It's no secret Luffy is a pirate, and that his goal is to become the king of these pirates, the very pirates who make up some of the most vile and evil characters in all of One Piece, which, let me remind you, we have Crocodile, who created a fake drought killing millions just so he could get rich selling rain powder to the people of Alabasta, because otherwise they would have nothing to eat as they watch their crops dry up. And then we have Queen, who used biological weapons on his own men at that, showing no mercy. Meanwhile, his captain Kaido wanted nothing but to start a massive war just so he could fight someone strong enough to put him out of his misery. And then there's even Doflamingo, who owned an auction house, which is, you guessed it, slavery. Yet the worst thing Luffy ever did to gain his massive 3 billion berry bounty was defy the government, so that he could save his friend Nico Robin from being killed, who, by the way, was only targeted in the first place because she simply read a book. Oh yeah, and he also punched a celestial dragon because he shot his friend for no reason. This is a trend that continues all throughout One Piece. The only times Luffy's bounty ever increased was when he became a larger threat to the world government, more specifically to the 5 elders and Imu, who hold positions of power that Luffy threatens with his lack of respect, oppressive leaders that have destroyed entire islands such as Ohara. If they get too close to learning the truth, you could almost argue that these are the true villains in One Piece. But if they are the true villains, what does that make pirates like Crocodile or Kaido, as they are the enemies of the world government? Begging the question, who are the real villains in One Piece? Pirates or Marines? And what does this make Luffy? It's kind of complicated, so first tell me down in the comments, what's your opinion of Luffy? Do you think he's a hero or something else? And now let's find out, what is the deal with Luffy? How is he one of the most wholesome characters in all of anime, and yet at the same time, one of the bad guys is a pirate? Very early on, we find Luffy's kind-heartedness and compassion for not only his friends, but even strangers is what truly defines him. It's nothing to do with the fact that he is a pirate or wanted by the government for being such. Throughout the series, we see Luffy almost always willing to lend a hand to those in need, especially to those suffering at the hands of an oppressive force such as Crocodile. We even saw it with Drum Kingdom in Wapol. Luffy's tone switched as soon as Wapol began disrespecting the pirate flag that meant so much to Chopper, declaring this flag is a promise of life, and that even if he didn't know who it belonged to, it wasn't something to be laughed at or shot at. Most of the time, Luffy is a fool, but often his opponents take him for granted at first sight, because Luffy never takes himself too seriously, leaving his foes to quickly find out Luffy is not someone to mess with. He is a pirate after all, and nor does he play by the rules. On the outside, he may seem like a lighthearted fool, but in reality, Luffy doesn't care about what's right or what's wrong. If you do something that violates his views, you're going to get the full force of his attacks. We saw this again most recently with Otama and the people of Wano. The moment Luffy found out they couldn't eat one of Luffy's most favorite and sacred things because Kaido was hoarding the food, Luffy swore to defeat Kaido at any cost. That was the reason he was so determined to defeat Kaido. It wasn't because Kaido was the bad guy and he needs to be stopped. It was because Luffy hates him after what he did to people he cares about. Still, these are the qualities of a hero and what you would expect from the main protagonist. It should be no surprise because when Luffy declares to become the Pirate King, he's declaring to become the person who is the most free. Almost like Eren from Attack on Titan, except Luffy isn't actually insane, just a little peculiar. Knowing all this, we can clearly see Luffy is not a villain. Yes, sometimes he's a little dumb, but when it comes down to it, Luffy is extremely kind and will fight to the death to protect his vision of justice. Yet despite all of this, Luffy is not a hero, because no matter which way you slice it, he is a pirate who couldn't care less about being a good guy or following anyone else's rules. Explaining why the people who fear Luffy more than anyone else are the same ones who set the rules, leaving the groundwork for oppression. This is why the world government acknowledges Luffy as the greatest threat to their rule, especially as he comes ever so closer to uncovering the mystery of the Void Century, along with the vile crimes they committed to cover it up. Luffy's actions have always been against oppressive forces such as the government or celestial dragons, so he is dangerous, but only to those who hope to rule others. In perhaps my favorite scene spanning all 1,000 plus episodes, Luffy displayed his lack of respect for authority, punching a celestial dragon in the face for violating his friend. A scene that can be watched over and over again because it encapsulates what One Piece is really about: freedom. Luffy knew full well that crossing that line, punching a celestial dragon and defying the highest authority would bring almost certain death. A punch that would bring the Navy's greatest powers, the admirals, to attack Luffy. A punch no one else except maybe Zoro, because he also almost sliced him up earlier. No one else would even dare land that punch if it meant declaring a war on the world. A punch that shocked everyone who witnessed it. It displayed Luffy will stop at nothing to protect his friends, no matter who they are up against, and not even in the face of imminent death. You could almost call Luffy a hero for this. You could also call him a villain or maybe an anti-hero. That's where it gets tricky, because morality in One Piece is more complex than most other forms of media. The main characters are pirates after all, and yet they are the good guys. It's kind of a weird concept, but Vivi really sends home this idea. During the reverie, while talking to Rebecca about Luffy and their encounters with this alleged criminal, she said, "They're not in it to be heroes, their bounties get higher and higher as they get more infamous." Basically, she's saying, Luffy doesn't care about being a hero or doing what's right, they're just being themselves. And if anyone knows that, Vivi does better than anyone else because Luffy saved her kingdom from oppression while the government sat and did nothing. She saw firsthand just how Luffy and the other Straw Hats did what was right, while the traditional heroes pretended like nothing was going on, and even though Luffy did their job for them, they still increased his bounty, making Luffy seem more evil to those who have never met him. Because if they did get to meet Luffy, they would learn the truth about who he is and what he stands for. Luffy and the Straw Hats are shown to have their own code of honor. Even if it may not line up with their traditional sense of good or bad, it pushes the idea that morality is a case-by-case basis. In the very first chapter, our perception of morality is challenged, with Lucky Roux shooting the mountain bandit, a sneaky move, and while yes, it could be avoided and the situation could de-escalate, Shanks did declare they are pirates and they don't play by the rules. A twist to traditional good and bad. Our protagonists are fighting dirty, yet when reading you don't feel as if they are in the wrong. Of course, under the context that the mountain bandits are far worse, threatening to murder a child, it was justified, which is how you have to look at each character in this series. Usually they are not your traditional good guy, they are upholding a different set of values. Sanji, for example, doesn't care what someone did or who they are. If they're hungry, he will feed them. Anyone who is starving, Sanji will make sure to make them a well-cooked meal because Sanji knows the horrors of being on the brink of death from not eating. Even if this person is an enemy or has done him wrong, he will uphold his sense of honor and do what feels right. It's not about being a hero for characters in One Piece, it's about being someone with strong principles and honor. By portraying pirates as the main characters, morality is seen through a lens that is not always black or white, but rather through a more authentic way that depends on the situation, staying true to oneself. So after all this, is Luffy a hero? Luffy is the main character, so we are inclined to call him a hero, but he said it himself. I love heroes, but I don't want to be one. Heroes share meat with other people, I want all the meat. So yeah, his actions are motivated by his desire to do what's right and his vision of freedom, but that doesn't mean he knows how to behave, because at the end of the day, he's really just a kind idiot. So now, do you still think Luffy is a good guy or a hero, or now do you think he's a bad guy or somewhere in between? Let me know in the comments. Check out my last video, uncovering the secrets of the Void Century. Until next time, I'll catch you in my next video.